Think like a raindrop. On fires, healing, and reimagining what the land and we are capable of. Evacuation orders. 3 horses lined up to trailers and took careful steps to board and be transported to our farm as they evacuated from the Table Rock complex fire, which grew to over 12,000 acres this past week. The horses are back home now, and a drenching rain has fallen steadily through the night. It could have come at a better time, like last week or the week before, but we're just glad the rain is here. Horses load themselves into big metal boxes willingly and calmly, only when their people have spent a long time building trust. Trust is the foundation that holds us here. We don't need to call gravity by name to feel sure it will hold us to the earth. We trust that the new green of spring will bring rebirth, and that the rain will eventually arrive and douse the parched wildlands littered with the kindling of Hurricane Helene. It was the massive rainfall of an inland hurricane, the water, coupled with human error, that created the ideal conditions for the largest forest fire on record in the state of South Carolina. That feels like it goes against the law of nature. And what felt certain before seems fragile now in this land, still wound raw and grieving for the way things used to be. More fires are raging across the border to our north in elevations that took the brunt of Helene. The Table Rock fire was upgraded to the #1 fire concern in the U.S. yesterday. And this week, DC-10s loaded with fire retardant went to work swooping low through the valleys for the first time ever in the history of our state. I've written in the past about how even minor disruptions to the routine at the farm make me and the herd uneasy. The horses and I love consistency and reliability, knowing that the humans and the food bowls will show up and do their part. 6 months past Helene, the horses and I are learning to just go with what is in front of us. We're getting better at managing unexpected flows. But something really beautiful happened this week when the evacuees arrived and we played a game of Tetris, fitting the herd into creative paddock configurations to make room for the new arrivals. I started seeing the land in a new way. I became aware of how I'd limited myself and the use of this land through the blind familiarity of routine. I began to see options that were closed to me before, new ways to incorporate the forest and the fields into an expanded home for the horses, one that works with the wildness inside them, inside the land, instead of suppressing it. Think like a raindrop. The guilt of containment slides comfortably toward inaction. I'm always saying my best work comes solely from desperation. I can peel the broad electric tape fence around the bodies of trees felled by the storm and create endless possibilities of paths through the shadowy forest where the horses can lounge in the heat of summer. I can fortify the fencing around the 2 paddocks fallen into disuse, not because they're unworthy, but because they're cumbersome to access. The car-wide strip of grass between the fields, the hill with the picnic tables between the house and the barn, the field that has become a graveyard with its wildflowers and blueberries, the ground indented with the memory of horses who have been here before. Routine has masked the possibilities of this farm. The extreme weather events, the fires, I can't stop them with my hands. But the escaped mint I pull up from the roots by the garden, that's a potential bounty, a landscape the horses can consume. Because horses are their own kind of extreme weather event when kept in close quarters. They graze the ground to dirt. And as we lose more land to subdivisions and cities, horsekeeping, like community, will require more and more creativity. Europe is well ahead of us in their knowledge of farming on small acreage. My wheels are turning. I sat down with Caitlin Green this week to capture her story for an upcoming episode of my podcast. Caitlin recently launched Green Roots LLC, a business that combines all her passions: farm management, gardening, and equine physiology. From track systems to utilizing native botanicals, Caitlin works with the land in front of her instead of forcing the landscape into an unnatural ideal. Be on the lookout for that episode launch. What struck me when talking to Caitlin is her ability to find solutions in places where most of us just see problems. As I write, the first raindrops are starting to fall, quenching the flood-ripped, burning mountains around me. When the fires began to grow, I sent Christopher a message saying, "I don't care if the barn floods. I just want the rain to come." "It won't flood," he said. "I cleared the channels for the water to flow." "You're a genius," I said. "I was taught to think like a raindrop," he says. Stable Roots is where I share stories about horses, resilience, and the life I've built from both. Subscribing helps keep these stories going. A paid subscription goes even further by directly supporting the farm, the horses, and the work we do here daily. However you choose to be a part of this community, I'm just grateful that you're here. The felt sense. How do we think like a raindrop? It's so easy, it's hard, but we can start with the questions: what do I naturally move toward? And what changes my course? We spend a lot of time doing light touch releases along the horses' energy meridians at the farm. Our palms trace the line of their neck, back, and haunches, pausing when they blink and waiting for a physical cue, a lick, a chew, a sigh, a stretch that shows they're relaxing and letting go of tension. The heart meridian releases are my favorite because as my hand skims their heart girth and the inside of a front leg, I feel my heart link up with theirs. The horse and I breathe deeply and work together. Invisible waves of connection keep information flowing through herds. Think schools of fish moving smoothly en masse. Reflexes signaled by cues science is only beginning to understand. When we think like a raindrop, we follow the logic of impulse, sensation, and drives that move beyond linear thought. We are literally going with the flow. When the veil is thin. I wake up in the wee hours to sign into a virtual session with Candace Webster in South Africa. Candace is a healer whose herd of horses inserted themselves into her work. A horse walked into the house while she offered a healing session to a family friend who had suffered a tremendous loss. The horse worked in tandem with Candace that day, and her herd has been at it ever since. Her viral videos of clients on a bed in the middle of a circle of horses have crossed most of our reel feeds. I started working with Candace because I was physically sick and I'd been professionally standing in my own way, terrified of bridging the unexplained with the traditional way of working alongside horses. While I experienced daily phenomena that I was just learning how to describe in words, my work already bucked the system, challenging long-held habits in the horse industry. I was afraid that talking about energy and the unseen would erase the trust I'd spent over 2 decades building with my clients. Connecting on a heart level with someone like Candace, who was so deeply immersed in following the lead of her herd, in congruence, and holding space lovingly for our wounds, and clearing blockages in our channels so information can flow, was and is profoundly life-altering for me. So about me being sick. It's only now that I'm able to write about this because so much in my world changed when I wasn't sure that I could physically keep going at the farm. So many people left and my world narrowed to the rooms in the back of the farmhouse. I'm still not driving long distances, but when I was at my lowest, I was afforded the privilege of being able to see more of what was in front of me, to figure out where my energy needed to go, to figure out my next steps. The sickness cleared out a ton of lingering bullshit. I'd pace the path outside the bedroom window when the worst of it hit each day. If I could get to the stump of white oak fallen in the hurricane, I knew I could sit there and stare at the sky until I made my way back. I'm a feral animal when I'm sick, particularly when I'm nauseous. I want to be in the woods and left alone. After the immediate emergency of Hurricane Helene passed at the farm, we were 2 weeks into a changed landscape, and Christopher and I were 3 weeks married. Before the storm and the wedding, I had ended an online meeting abruptly to call 911. And after that, I was caught in a loop of specialists trying to identify what was happening to my body. The day before the wedding, I collapsed on the couch after pushing myself too much, getting the gardens and the house all ready, and I wondered if I could even show up at the ceremony. My prayers were answered, and I'm so thankful that I felt okay to take part fully in that glorious day. 6 days later, Helene struck. When the power finally came back on and the water flowed from the farm's well again, my body looked at the fallen trees and downed fence lines and went into a full nervous system collapse. What followed was 2 months of hell. I will never forget the angels who stepped in during that time to keep the farm and my life going so that I could rest and seek answers. Beloved people filled in for me in the barn as my new husband learned how to farm, and my mother, who lives with us, figured out how to mom. Cardiologists, nurses, primary care, emergency care, urgent care, naturopaths, pharmacists, I needed them all during this time. And on a whim and out of desperation, I reached out to Candace Webster for a healing ceremony. Her work with me, on me, ended up being the missing link that brought me back to my life and work again. The work I'm here to do. Each year at the farm, we host fourth-year students from the Medical University of South Carolina during their integrative medicine rotations, a chance to explore where people go outside of medicine to feel better. Though I would have told you my work was about wellness and helping people find balance before the storm, my sickness, and the fires, it has taken all 3 of these things to make me own it, to wear the badge proudly, to not be ashamed of the woo. Like the landscape, I am changed. In 1861, in Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address, he called on the better angels of our nature, an appeal for unity in a deeply divided nation. I love that phrase. It's a reminder of how it's our work to plumb our core ethics and figure out who we are. When things are rough, we can dissolve into fear and judgment and spread that poison all around us, or we can take stock of a changed landscape and use the ashes as mortar to build something new. Will we stay the same? Or will we allow ourselves to be changed for the better? For my part, I am partnered with the energy of my horse herd to help you find balance and wellness. Come find me. Love, Kim.